Hello everybody and welcome to this webinar on how to apply or reapply for the Princess Royal Training Awards. I'm Michael Osbaldeston from the City and Guilds Group, and I'm going to be with you for the next 20 minutes, half an hour, to just run through some thoughts that we've had here to help you in your applications and reapplications, and to answer your questions, which of course is one of the most important bits. So if you've got questions during the course of the webinar, please feel free to add them to the box on the screen, right hand side. We're also very happy to have telephone conversations after the webinar. If people want to chat things through, then again, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Remy or Laura, any of the team, and we can schedule a telephone call to run through your particular feedback from the application forms. So thank you for joining us. It's a beautiful sunny day here in London. It may be deep in snow where you are, but hopefully you're keeping warm, and that you've got back to enjoy the next few minutes as we run through this. So what I'm going to talk about during the webinar is what's new for 2019. Give you some of our suggestions on how to build on your application form. Talk about a little bit about evidence, because these are evidence-based awards and it's important that we remember that we have to evidence the things we're saying. We have some excuse me, top tips from our chief assessor, and we've also got some ideas that would help you develop what you're wanting to present to us. And of course, like I said, questions and answers, very happy to take them. Several people now on the webinar, so please make sure you send us your questions all the way through the webinar. I'll deal with them at the end. It's probably easier to deal with them at the end than part way through. But again, if you want us to talk to you on a one-to-one basis, we are very happy to do that. So what's new in 2019? Well, one of the things we've done is we've separated out the application form from the guidance notes. Now, I think Remy has actually emailed everybody this morning and sent them to you as an attachment. So that should allow you to print those off at your leisure and to have a look to see what we've done. We took feedback last year on the combined application form and planner, and people said that it may have been slightly more confusing than we wanted it to be. We actually wanted to simplify things, but of course sometimes when you try and simplify things, it doesn't always quite work. So we are receptive to feedback across the awards, and we're very keen to make sure that they are as not easy to apply for. We want to make them accessible. We know it's robust. We know that you're going to go through quite a very robust assessment process, but we do want it to be accessible. So anything we can do to help that, we will do. So there are two things to print off later on if you haven't done it already: the application form, which is simply the application form, and the application planner, which gives you the criteria and it gives you ideas for the evidence it can attach. And it also shows you the weighting of the various criteria and how many points are awarded to each in the initial assessment process. So that application planner document is absolutely fundamental. It also allows you to build your application along with colleagues and then cut and paste it onto the application form. So it's a good working document. It's a place to plan and to build and to edit and do all the things you want to do. And then once you've done that, to cut and paste and drop it into the application form before you send it to us. It also allows you to circulate the plan around your colleagues, so you can get people to work on various parts of it, and then it will, hopefully make life a bit easier when it comes to building the application. And we know that Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is the Princess Royal Training Award application form. So it does take a little while to put all these things together, and hopefully, and we'll be really interested to get your feedback at the end of the cycle. Hopefully it will make life easier for you. So just moving on to, the other thing to remind you, actually, if you have applied before, is that this year on hallmark number 1, we've reversed section 1 and 2. So section 1 is now the program you want to tell us about, and section 2 is telling us about how learning and development is critical to your organization and part of the DNA of it. And the reason we did that is because we know that people want to tell us about what they're proud of. They want to get that part of the story over to us first of all. So we've reversed those two sections. So if you've applied before, just check in Hallmark 1, but section 1 and section 2 are now the other way around. Shouldn't be a problem. They're the same questions. We just decided that, and we know from feedback, everybody's really excited about what they want to tell us. So the first thing to do is tell us, and then you can put it into context. So just to remind everybody about the hallmarks, because the hallmarks are the same. The first hallmark is about learning and development, training, learning and development is integral to your organization, very the core of your organization. The second hallmark is how the program is designed and delivered. And the third hallmark, of course, is about the impact that this training intervention, this learning that you've done, the impact that it's had both on the organization and on your people. And of course, these are evidence-based awards, and impact is the thing that we're driving towards. So let's have a look at some ideas that we've got in terms of your previous applications and the feedback that you had from the assessors. Now, I've had a chance to read through all the feedback documents to do with all the people who are on the webinar. And fascinating they were too, because it has to be said that everybody on the webinar is in a good place to continue to build their applications and hopefully be successful in applying for one of the Princess Royal Training Awards. As you know, we're trying to catch you in, not catch you out. We're trying to enable you to succeed rather than to find fault. So these awards are a positive-based award. We're not here to trip you up. Everything that you need to put into the application forms in the planner, and we're here to try and help you achieve that. So we like to think that we are as positive as we can be. We can't write them for you, obviously, but we can help you as much as we can. So looking through all the various feedback reports that I've read, there are some common strands which I'll draw out. I don't want to highlight specific people on the webinar because that would be a bit difficult to do. But I do want to draw out some common strands which I think many of you will recognize may help you develop your next application. So I think the first thing to draw attention to is ensuring that there's clarity in the application form as to why you did what you did and what you were seeking to achieve. So why was it that you needed to do this intervention? What was it that drove you to make the decision to do it? And related to that is ensuring that the assessors can see that there are clear targets and measures associated with that aspiration. In essence, it's telling us what happened before and what happened afterwards. What was the situation that you were trying to sort out, and what was the impact that you had in sorting it out, and what did you do in the middle to do that? So the before and the after is a really important part of that narrative. When you're presenting to us the evidence and presenting to us the narrative, the other thing to have in the back of your mind all the time is cause and effect. So it's that pathway between what you're saying and in fact what happened, and that auditable trail that shows that you can link the claim with the intervention, with the thing that you needed to sort out. So cause and effect. And in fact, that's true in many areas of business, isn't it? That we often make claims, but then when we try and take that audit trail back to evidence that claim, it's sometimes a bit difficult. But what the assessors need to see is what you're saying at the end of the process actually is the result of what you've done with your people. So cause and effect, before and after, cause and effect. The other area that it's important is this whole notion of cost effectiveness. Now, that's not necessarily in terms of pounds and pennies. That may be cost effectiveness, maybe in terms of time. So it may be in terms of a different sort of investment. And don't forget, when it comes to what you're measuring, it's what's important to you, not something that we dictate to you. So you tell us what you want to measure and how you've measured it, and we will assess the appropriateness of the measure that you have made on the thing you want to measure. We're not insisting that the measure is financial. We're not insisting that the metrics are around, I don't know, staff retention. It's what you're trying to achieve. So it's you telling us what's important and then showing us how you've measured against that importance. And that's where your cost effectiveness comes in. So what is it that's important to you in terms of cost effectiveness? Not something we dictate, something that you tell us and then explain to us and evidence. And the other area that comes out in many of the application forms is this whole notion of baseline. So tell us what you're measuring against. So what was the baseline? So if we're looking at your organization, tell us what the starting point is. And again, it's back to that before and after. If you're referencing your sector or your business area, then what's normal? So if you say, you know, this percentage, we've made this percentage increase, tell us what the percentages are based on. What are the numbers? So give us a baseline. Because if you say, you know, 98% improvement, and that actually means 3 people, that's you know, perhaps not the best way to tell the story. So ensure that we have baseline figures that we can assess against. We don't know what they are because it's the baselines that are important to you. So you need to communicate to us a baseline figure. And again, if you're using percentages, please tell us what the base number you're working on, because again, that helps us understand. It allows us to make comparisons that are important to you. We're not comparing you against anybody else. That's the great thing about the Prince Royal Training Awards. You're not competing against anybody else. So all those of you on the webinar today are not competing with each other. You're only competing against what you set out to achieve within your organization, which is why it's a standard and not a winner takes all. In terms of skill development, nobody's a loser. Any skill development is going to have a positive effect. We're just trying to pick out the really brilliant stories that can be shared with other people and other people can learn from. So the comparison is the comparison you want us to see, not a comparison that we impose upon you. And I think the other area that comes out in reading in many of the feedbacks is that, and then, you know, it's a year or possibly 2 years on from your application, the evidence you will have matured significantly. And very often, and we don't mind if people do this, putting an application form in when a piece of skills development is relatively new sometimes means that it's come to us a year too soon. And you will all now have better quality evidence, better quality metrics, and be able to tell your story much better. There's an enthusiasm, I think, when you've done a great piece of training to jump and say, yeah, you know, it's really good stuff. And we quite often say, yes, it's really good stuff. Come back next year and tell us what impact it's had over a longer period of time. And that's a good thing, because guarantee that the story you'll tell will be stronger and that you'll have much more to tell us than you would have done a year ago or even 2 years ago. So clarity of message, clarity of story, matured evidence, and making sure we understand that before and after, and that we can see the cause and effect clear and the measures against what's important to you in your business or organization. So just moving on another slide. Evidence is important. I'm going to talk a little bit more about evidence in a moment. But the other thing is, one of the things we really have come to understand over the 4 years now that we've done the awards is make sure the person who's going to complete the application form actually either listens to this webinar or joins one of our other webinars or comes to one of our workshops. Everything we know is that if the person who's putting the application together participates in a webinar or participates in a workshop, they will have a much clearer view as to what we want from them. And that's a really fundamental bit. And as I say, very happy to talk to people on a one-to-one basis. The team here at City Hills Group, happy to chat. The Chief Assessor, Paul, is very happy to have telephone conversations to help you understand what it is you can do to put forward a successful application. So evidence. These are evidence-based awards. You can make any claim you want, but we have to have evidence to underpin that, and that's the important part of it. So the evidence has to support the statements that you're making. The evidence has to allow the assessor to delve deeper into what it is you're saying in the narrative, in the copy that you're presenting to us. So each of the hallmarks has to have evidence attached to it. And there is a limited number of words, and I'm sure you've all noticed that in the past, because everybody says we haven't got many words. But there's a reason for that. One is these have to be doable. We have to be able to assess these. but the evidence is the place to attach additional information that supports what's being said. And again, you've probably heard us talk about this before. If it's in the application form and the evidence, when we come to do the visit, we can delve more deeply into it. If it's not referenced in the application form of the evidence, we can't take it into account. That's outside the box. So remember, this box can be really deep. So if the evidence only has to reference bits, if you're, for instance, putting in your strategic plan for learning and development for your organization, you don't have to give it all to us. Perhaps just give us a paragraph out of it or a sentence out of it so that we can look into it further when we come to see you. We believe what you tell us. We don't disbelieve what you tell us. So if you say there's a strategic document and this is what it references, we'll believe you. We're not going to say, oh, no, it doesn't. We are going to believe what you say. So if you're referencing the learner voice, then just give us a couple of short quotes, and then we can come and listen to some more learners when we come to visit you. If there's a lot of figures that you want to present to us, if you've got some really interesting impact on sales figures, for instance, you don't have to give us all of it. You just have to give us enough for us to say, yes, there is evidence behind this, and we want to delve further into that. You only have one attachment for each hallmark, so you have to be, you have to get the blue pencil out and be quite strict on the editorial. But within that one document, you can give us lots of different bits of evidence that we can then delve into further. So some financial stuff, some voice of the learner, some information from the managers, some impact stuff from your customers. Just use that document to really get the assessors excited and show there's so much more behind the application form that you're putting forward to us. You substantiate what you say in your narrative in the evidence, and we will then delve further into it once we come to do the assessment and the validation visit with you. So it's important in the evidence to select the right evidence, the relevant evidence. It's important to reference in the narrative which evidence you're linking it into, and when you list the evidence on the application form, it's always useful to help us understand which bit of that statement you're referencing. Either using numbers, or tremendously helpful if we use numbers in the narrative that then links back into the evidence at the bottom. If you get the evidence in the wrong hallmark, don't worry. We don't take marks off if it doesn't always quite flow as it should do. We will find it if it's there. Ideally, of course, you will run through the hallmarks and the evidence will flow through. Sometimes you might want to use evidence for more than one hallmark. Don't duplicate it. Just reference the fact it might relate to others, because don't waste your words, and don't waste the megabytes that you've got in terms of the evidence you're attaching. So you have to be really quite organized at this point to make sure you're getting across as much as you can to enable the assessor to have the best possible way of making that positive assessment. We do want your application to come to life, so please don't take the pride out of it that you'll obviously have. You wouldn't be putting this forward if you weren't proud of it. Don't make it dull. Do make it passionate. Don't let people edit out the passion. We like passion. We get excited when we read these, and the assessors do too. So don't lose that. The evidence will bring the application to life, because you can only, like we said, we've only got so many words to work on. The evidence is the bit that gets us really excited, because that's the bit that allows us to see what's behind the narrative that you're telling us. So here's some do's and don'ts. We'll start with the do's. Keep it relevant. Keep it relevant to what you've told us in the application form. Keep it focused on the story you're trying to tell us. Indicate if there's more evidence that you can include. If you've got some really confidential financial stuff that you don't want to put in the evidence, and I can assure everybody that we do not share any of this with anybody. It's only seen by the assessment team. So nothing that you send to us is seen by anybody else. So be assured that anything that's confidential will remain confidential. But sometimes if something is so confidential you don't want to put it in, then just make reference to the fact it exists, and we can see it when we come to see you. And then we'll know it's there. So you won't be penalized for that. We fully understand. Sometimes financial data, your senior management may be uncomfortable in sending it to us. Do reference it. Do say it exists, and then we will pick it up on it. And that's really important. But do tell us what it is, because if it's not in the application form, we can't look at it when we come. Telepathy is not a good way to communicate with our assessors. They don't have the crystal ball to look into, but they will look deeply into the evidence that you provide. Don't, in the evidence, just repeat what you got in the text. That would be something which, obviously would be a waste of words. Don't attach irrelevant material. Now, I would actually say, on the whole, try not to attach things like photographs, because unless it tells a really powerful story, it's much more important to use words at this stage, to use metrics, to use figures, to use elements of that. To be honest, it's rare that a photograph tells that much of a story. We can't have links to videos. We can look at stuff when we come out on the validation visit. We're very happy to watch a video as part of the presentation, but at this stage, the assessors can't really do that. At the end of the webinar, we will answer any questions that you've got. So when we get to the end, we will be picking up on questions that you're sending in, which is brilliant. And as I say, please, if you want to have a conversation, drop us an email, give Remy a call, and we'll pick up and we'll arrange some one-to-one conversations with you. So evidence, what makes good evidence? What makes good supporting evidence? Well, we've got examples in the planner, but there are certain things that obviously will be there. Things like business metrics. Again, what were you trying to achieve? Did you achieve it? And what are the figures? Charts and graphs are good because you can tell great stories through charts and graphs. Give us some stats because stats are helpful, but give us some baselines. We also like learner voice, so give us some quotes, which is always good. Testimonies from staff, from customers, from the learners, from the managers. Just references, just give us a short little, short bit that we can link into. Comparative data is really useful, so the before and the after. Going back to what I was saying earlier on, help us to understand what was before, help us to understand what the intervention drove in terms of change. If your organization is not driven by business metrics, tell us what's important to you. Tell us what it is that you're seeking to achieve. Show us what it is that you've sought to achieve and have achieved. Every organization will be different, interestingly, because every piece of skills development will be addressing the needs that you've got personally. So just make sure that what you present to us is relevant to you. We aren't dictating, we're not saying it has to be pounds, shillings and pence, it has to be this, it has to be that. You tell us what's important to you, and then we will look and assess that. So getting the evidence right, reinforce the statements you make. Like I said, spark the interest of the assessors. I think this is a great chance to get the assessors to say, oh yes, I want to learn more about that. This is really exciting stuff. I want to come and find out about this. You're trying to tease the assessor into coming to do a visit. And from the visits that we do, we know how amazingly informative they are. They're inspirational. Each of the visits is undertaken by an assessor and an ambassador from the City and Guilds group. I've been around at City and Guilds now for 20 odd years, and I can honestly say that the staff who come back from doing the validation visits are more motivated and more inspired by those visits than anything I've ever seen in my time at City and Guilds group. It is amazing to come out and see what people are doing on the ground, to see the impact it's had, to talk to the learners, to listen to senior managers, to see what impact the training and the skills development has had. We have staff who've been around a long, long time who've come back and they're almost reinvigorated and revitalized by their experience. Now, of course, part of what we're doing through the Princess Royal Awards is sharing that excitement of skills development throughout the alumni of the award recipients. And we had a breakfast just before Christmas with John Lewis and River Island talking about the things they'd done and sharing with 20, 30 other recipients of things that they've been learning. Yesterday we celebrated our 140th anniversary. Despite what my colleagues say, I wasn't actually here at the opening ceremony 140 years ago, but yesterday we had the Princess Royal talking about how important these awards are and how important the learnings and lessons from them have become and how we're sharing them across many different sorts of employers, some of which are commercial, some of which are voluntary organisations, some of which are small, some of which are large. So very much part of that world. So don't forget, 1 document per hallmark, 2 megabytes and no more than 500 words. That gives you another 1,500 words across the whole of the application form, of course, but we can't do external links because the assessors won't necessarily have access to them. So the Chief Assessor, Paul, has sent some top tips in. Avoid over modesty. Now that's a really important one. So it's very difficult to assess generalities. Don't hide your light under a bushel. You've got some great lights to show us. Having read through the application forms and the feedback report, you have some brilliant stories to tell. Don't be afraid to tell them. You must, of course, provide tangible metrics and measures if you're making claims of achievement. That's fairly clear. And the application is really the key to opening the door to this validation visit. And in terms of the visit, it's not an opportunity to fill in the blanks within your application form. It's got to be in the form for us to be able to look at it on the visit. So please reference it so that we can delve more deeply into it. If the evidence isn't in the application form, then as far as the application is concerned, it doesn't exist. I went on one validation visit in the first year, and on the wall of the training department that I went into was the most amazing evidence, exactly what was necessary to prove what was being said. It hadn't been referenced in the application form, and we couldn't take it. And we had to encourage that particular organisation to come back a second year and, goodness sake, put the information on that wall, take a photograph of it. And I've just said, you know, pictures don't always tell a story, but they do tell a story. Take a picture of it on the wall and send it to us as part of the evidence. And it was so sad, because there was this wonderful piece of evidence that they'd forgotten to attach. And we looked at it and we said, why didn't you tell us that? That's exactly what we needed to see. We don't need lots of unnecessary detail. We can do detail when we come and see you. Quotations, case studies, brief extracts of what the assessor looking for, and that will make all the difference when we come to do the validation visit and allow us to dig more deeply into it. So, as I say, we're here to help. Remy sat with me here. She's looking after the technology. As you can imagine, they won't let me loose with it. And she's doing a great job. Laura, up in York, is a valued member of our team. And between Remy and Laura, they can give you an enormous amount of advice and guidance and support, as can Paul, the Chief Assessor. We're all here to help you achieve. None of us are here to help you fail. We're all here to help you achieve, as indeed is the whole assessor team. So do make use of the support. We had a workshop here in London a couple of weeks ago. We had OpenReach, who got one of the awards last week. And Mark from OpenReach said they didn't ask for help because they thought it was a sign of weakness. He said if only we'd asked for help, it would have been a lot easier to win the award. And it was really interesting. He said we didn't want to ask for help because we weren't, we just didn't want to do it. He said, having listened to the team today, we now know we should have picked up the phone. So please take Mark's advice as a very successful recipient of a Princess Royal Training Award. And if you want help and advice, pick up the phone. We're here. We love taking calls. We love talking to you. We love listening to you, and we will provide all the support we can do. So we've got some workshops. We've had one in London already. I'm about to leap on a train to go and do one that's not on the list, because we've got one in Gateshead tomorrow morning at breakfast time. So if you're anywhere near Gateshead College at 8:30 tomorrow morning, feel free to come along to one in Gateshead, assuming it doesn't snow too much in the meantime. We've got them in Belfast, Birmingham, Manchester, Cardiff, Edinburgh and London. We are all around the country. And this year we have a much wider selection of venues, and in fact most of them being hosted by people who've achieved the awards in the last 2 or 3 years, which is brilliant, because they bring a passion to these awards which is absolutely superb. And at each one of those workshops, not only do you get a chance to talk to the team, talk to assessors, work through some of your ideas, have a personal chat with an assessor or with the team about what you're putting forwards, but a lot of ideas will obviously be shared, and a chance to talk to other people. You're not in competition with one another. You're hopefully going to achieve awards. All of you are hopefully going to achieve awards. So having a chance to talk to other people who are putting together applications can be really helpful. It's really good. We get some really good debates going. We have some exercises we make you do. We make you go through an imaginary application and look at the evidence and then tell us what's wrong with it, and that's great fun. But this is a really good chance for you to come together. So if you can make any of those workshops, or if you happen to be in Gateshead at 8:30 tomorrow morning, you'll be welcome at Gateshead College. Do come and join us. Do come and meet the team. Do come and meet the assessors. Do come and meet the chief assessor at some of them. and we'll do our absolute utmost to help support you go from not yet receiving an award to receiving one of the Princess Royal Awards. Well worth doing, because we know from research that getting an award does help with retaining good quality staff. It does help with recruiting good quality staff. And over half of the recipients of awards to date have had an increase in their learning and development and training budgets within their organisation. So if you know the reason, you get more money to spend on training and development, which can't be bad, can it? So, questions and answers. I'm looking across to Remy now to see what questions we've got. And we are just waiting for the technology to help us do it. We've got one that says, is it detrimental to have applied for an award before? No, not at all. If you applied for an award before and you're coming back to apply for another one, that's brilliant. No, we don't, because you're only being assessed on what you present to us. Whether you've applied for an award before or not, it doesn't matter. We look at what you put in front of us in your application form. We don't read the previous application form. We look at your current application form and we work on that basis. The deadline, as you all know, is the end of March. I'm looking at Remy for the exact date because I can't remember it.
It's the 29th of March.
Right, it's Friday the 29th of March is the deadline. You'd have thought I might know that, but I didn't. I did, but I can never remember it exactly. So between now and then, very happy to have conversations with you. If you want any of those conversations, just give us a call, give us a shout, and we'll have them. Now we've got a question there, and there we are.
It was, someone's asking if they've applied before.
Yeah.
Should they make it obvious that they've seen some of the information before, or just submit the whole thing as complete?
All right. I submit it as new because we take each application on it. If you've applied before, then yes, just do a submission, do an application, and treat it almost as a new application. Hopefully learning from the previous one, hopefully learning from what was in the feedback, using the feedback, and we will deal with it that way. That's easier for the assessors because otherwise they'd have to flip backwards and forwards. So put your application together with your evidence and submit it. And we will look at that as a fresh application. But we do hope that you use the feedback that you've had to help build a stronger application and address some of the challenges that you might have had.
Exactly, that's where I'm at, because sometimes the application may, or the information you want to provide to us may have even moved on from the first time you submitted your application. So it's really important to, attach those fresh information. That makes the application more exciting for the assessors as well to look at.
Yes, you'll have far more information from a year or 2 years on to present to us, to provide to us, to help excite the assessors.
Yeah.
So I think...
I hope that answers your question.
I'm just looking through to see if there are any more questions. Yeah. I always think that technology on GoToWebinar puts the questions into a very tiny box at the screen at this end, so we're just flicking down to make sure we haven't missed anything. No, we haven't. So thank you for joining us today and for staying with us on the webinar. It will be online in the next day or so if people want to come back to it. But like I said, do please give us a call, drop us an email if you'd like us to chat about your particular feedback. Very happy to do that. Thank you for taking the time and trouble to join us today. We do wish you well in your application. We look forward to receiving them. We look forward to coming and seeing them and doing the validation visits because we're sure you will build stronger and more convincing applications because of the feedback and because you'll have additional data, additional evidence and additional impact to show to us. So thank you all for today. Thank you, Remy, for looking after the technology, and very grateful for your time today. And we do hope that the snow doesn't lie too deeply where you are and that you have a very good rest of the day. So thank you for joining us and goodbye.